Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. Today we have a very special guest, Brandon Smith. Tell us about yourself, Brandon.
Thanks, Craig. I have lived my whole life here in Lake County, actually. I was born in Waukegan and grew up in the Zion Winthrop Harbor area. My house in Winthrop Harbor was 2 blocks from Wisconsin. So close to Wisconsin you could smell the cheese. It was kind of our running joke in our house. But yeah, I graduated Zion Benton High School, and Lake County is really home for me. I had grandparents that both my mom's folks and my dad's folks live in Lake County. A Stern School Road here in Gurnee, that is actually my grandparents' ancestors.
Wow. So I imagine since you've been in this area for so many years, you've really grown a heart for this community.
Well, absolutely. I mean, after having had the opportunity to be a pastor here at Village Church of Gurnee for, I've been on staff for about 25 years now here. You certainly develop a heart for the people. You have an better understanding of what some of the needs are. And yet watching what happened as I've lived in Lindenhurst and in Grace Lake and serving Gurnee, and yet still having family back home in, again, the Zion Winthrop Harbor area. And, you go back and visit and you read things in the news, and Zion going down into Beach Park and Waukegan. I mean, those communities, those lakeshore communities, have really gone through a lot of changes. They've fallen on some hard times. When the power plant in Zion closed down, the community lost a huge portion of their tax base. Just some tremendous need. And with that being home for me, it just really, it's like in some ways my heart never really left home, even though I live and work 25 minutes away.
Sure. So I guess that would really make you want to have maybe a missional heart for this area, especially Lake County and some of these areas that might be struggling. Because as we look at Lake County, there's areas that are just really affluent and rich, and there's some really wonderful things. And then, as you're saying, there's some areas that really have fallen on hard times. So what are some what-if things that you started thinking of from this?
Well, interestingly, the one thing in particular that started stirring in my heart, believe it or not, came out of some of the experience that I and others from our church had with doing hurricane relief in the Gulf Coast following Hurricane Katrina. And we, through some connections that we had, ended up doing a lot of work in kind of the Pass Christian, Mississippi area. And I had the opportunity to go actually with one of our later teams. This was a youth missions team that served over spring break in 2008. And just seeing the work that was being done down there by this army of volunteers. And you have different teams of volunteers coming in, different weeks, different people with different skill sets. And I remember there was the Gray Hut. It was the hub of operations for all the volunteer work that was happening in Pass Christian and the surrounding area, just bustling with activity, all of it volunteer-led. And it's just fascinating to see what was happening, and so encouraging to hear how the people of that region, they said it's the churches that have rebuilt the Gulf Coast. There were some other organizations that were more maybe prominently known in the national consciousness that you think of relief, but in some ways those organizations did not have a good reputation down with boots on the ground. It was the churches, people coming from all over the country that were having this impact. And as I came back home after taking that in and seeing that fascinating experience, I started to wonder, what is there about what was happening down at Pass Christian, where you have volunteers and you have you're connecting the volunteers with needs of the community and different homeowners and so forth. We've got a community that people need that type of service. How can we develop ways to do that type of service and to do it in the name of Christ? And so that's kind of where the gears started to turn from there.
Okay. Yeah, because I suppose, especially for then bringing that heart and that mindset home, really then tending everyone around you, because especially in the American church, we definitely have this idea of missions is like what you're saying, where you're going somewhere and doing something big together, maybe with other churches. But really, we don't ever think, oh, missions is also my backyard. It's across the street. It's down the street. It's down at the supermarket. It's everywhere around us. So what were like the first couple years and first steps? What were some things that you started to do or have to start to change minds around for this idea of local short-term things?
Well, some of it right off the bat, I think you actually touched on it really well, Craig, is some of our students in our youth ministry, helping them to understand that missions isn't about geography. We were starting to see some things in our youth missions ministry that kids were, again, hearts to serve, but there was also that draw to, okay, well, I haven't been to this location before. And we took a step back and tried to help them understand that missions is about wherever there is the need, the opportunity to represent Christ through our actions and through our words. Let's do it. And we can do that locally just as much as we can internationally, because it's all about sharing the heart of Christ, the love and truth of Christ with people that you come in contact with. So that was a part of it. And then the other part is we needed to find some volunteers to help us with this. We had some fantastic people who gave us so much here through Village, but we needed partners in the community. We needed other churches to rally around, and a key ministry, a key organization that we were able to link arms with was called Love in the Name of Christ. Love Inc. of Lake County, and what they do is they try to coordinate the people of the churches, the resources of the churches, to put them in touch with the people in the community and to help build those relational bridges so that people's, certainly their physical needs can be met, but then those relational needs and ultimately, Lord willing, their spiritual needs. And once Love Inc. got on board, they were instrumental in helping us develop what for a couple of years was just a team of students from Village Church working in the Zion area, being housed at one church, doing meals at other churches, and working with those churches to identify who are the people that in this community. Whether they're seniors, whether they're people with disabilities. We built a couple of wheelchair ramps those first couple of years that were just fun projects to do because you get to know the homeowner throughout the entire span of the week. And that was exciting to see that. And then as we were talking with some of these other churches and other pastors that we knew, other people started to kind of catch the vision for what this might look like if they were to join up with us.
All that coming together, did it become something like maybe a bigger organization or a thought process between multiple churches?
Well, it was something because we had, I was serving in youth ministry at the time, and along with our high school pastor here at the church, we networked with a couple of guys that we knew that shared this heart, and one of them was in Zion itself, and so they had an obvious heart for reaching literally their backyard, and just with the resources that we were all collectively able to provide, that was a great team effort. And so we started with what we ended up calling the Many Hands Project, and that was just this idea of many hands making light work, but many hands that can reach many people and to do it in Christ's name. And first year we did it, it was two other churches working with us at Village. It was our friends at Emmanuel Church, where Josh Peterson was the youth pastor, and then Christ Community Church in Zion, where Leo Barnes was the youth pastor. And that first year was a missions trip unlike any other I have done before or since, because the Monday morning that we were getting ready to go out and start doing our homeowner projects, we had a historic storm blow through the area. The biggest power outage in ComEd history in the Chicago area, 800,000 customers that were knocked out power. And it was what's called, I guess, a derecho in weather terms, but basically it's straight line winds and violent storms. Ooh. And when we were getting ready to go out and start working and all the weather sirens go off, got the all clear, went outside, we realized that we were working in what looked and felt like literally a war zone.
Oh, man.
And our plan for the week was not totally out the window, but we had to do a lot of improvising without electricity, without showers. We had to take our showers in Lake Michigan one day because there was nowhere for us to shower. But through that week and getting to meet people and to come alongside of them to help them clean up their yards. I remember one family, the Yarrises, that he was extremely hard of hearing, I believe was dealing with some dementia. His wife was, they were both well into their 80s and had just a lot going on, a lot of trees, a lot of damage in their yard. And we were originally planning on going over to their house just to help pick some weeds.
Sure.
And maybe spend half a day there at the work crew. We ended up having an army of students and volunteers over there and help them get their yard cleaned up and put back together. It was a blessing beyond words to them. That type of story, well, that's one of the more memorable ones for me. Yeah. That type of story was replicated time and time and time again throughout that week and gave birth to some relationships that we were able to go back and, rake leaves for people in the fall. Sure. Or to, we went back and sang Christmas carols at their house in December and just kind of kept in touch with them because, again, it's the opportunity to do local ministry that you don't have the chance to do with other types of short-term quite as easily, where you can keep the relationship going in a face-to-face type of way. So just watching how God moved and worked through that, even those unprecedented circumstances that first year was just really something. It was something I'll never forget, I know.
So as the years rolled on, and I guess even leading up still today, what are some other like big ups and downs, or how well is that type of ministry still running either through Village or through other organizations here in Lake County?
Sure. I mean, it was great having seeing people who caught the heart, who caught the vision for this type of ministry, and for me, it was a real growth, kind of a growth in leadership in. How do I basically work myself out of a job? How do I train people? How do I equip people? Because so much of this between it, kind of the organization of it being in my head, but coupling that with my connections to the community, my heart for the community. Yeah. But how do we set this up so that it's not, doesn't hinge on any one person? And that was one of the more satisfying things for me. Was just seeing different people catch the vision for this, take different aspects of it and run with it, whether it was different pastors, different volunteers. I mean, we've got some people who, faithfully, year after year after year, would find ways to set aside a lot of time in their summer to serve. It's interesting because you do this enough years and, people do get tired. It is also a matter of sometimes keeping some of those relational connections, sharp and fresh. And we learned a lot. I'd say the ministry has certainly morphed quite a bit, but it's good seeing how God is doing a new thing. We had the opportunity to shift our ministry focus, as a church down more into Waukegan this past summer, working with an organization called the Fuller Center. Provides housing and other resources for people who are disadvantaged. Love Inc. was still a key partner with us, key teammate in us with that. And I'm by this point I'm more of an outside observer, as my job and ministry responsibilities have changed here at Village. But seeing how that value of missions isn't about geography. Missions is about representing Jesus wherever you're at and seeing how that has really gotten into the fabric of how our students think and how our ministry operates. That's been rewarding to see how God has sustained that even through all the transitions that that our local ministry has been through over the years.
I think that's a great lesson for all of us to put on our hearts, that really that mindset of missions is everywhere. We've talked about that a couple times now. I guess I'll end with one last question. Besides that, is there any other big takeaway? Is there any other big thing you really, if you're going to reach out to the hearts of people right now around this topic, what's like one big key thing you would want to say to them?
One of the most pleasant surprises that I saw coming out of this project was seeing the intergenerational part of this that developed. I was a youth pastor. We're working obviously with students, and you have to have, volunteer leaders that, work with them, particularly when you're doing the types of work projects that we did. But we had some retired guys that had a lot of skills in the trades, but just big hearts. I remember one project in particular that we were putting in some drain tile at somebody's house and started digging into the dirt, and just the number of roots that were in this dirt was just nuts. Our kids were getting really frustrated, and yet we brought over some of our retired guys and the leader. And I remember standing back and watching, okay, we've got 3 generations working together on this one project. You've got men that are grandpa age and men that are dad age and teenagers that were working on this project, joining forces, and then just seeing and hearing the comments that happened as the week unfolded, how our students not just respected and appreciated, but really grew to love these men that were as old as their grandparents, literally, and seeing how they could build those relationships and how together they could join forces as a team to, again, represent Jesus well through their words and their actions. That was something that I did not necessarily go into this as an intentional goal or objective, but as things ended up pulling together, we saw God work in that way. And I guess that would be one thing I would encourage people listening to consider is, how can you take advantage of the skills and expertise and the heart and energy and everything that all the different generations have, and how can you create opportunities to bring them together so that as a collective whole, we can represent Jesus well to a world that just desperately needs a show and tell lesson like what we can provide as his ambassadors. And so that's one of the many takeaways
I'm sure we could make just a whole podcast series just on this one topic alone. Brandon, I just want to thank you so much for so many reasons. Obviously, first of all, the big thing of sharing this story right now with me and everyone listening at home, but then as well, just for having this heart, for really letting God morph your heart into really seeing and understanding this and sharing it with others and really making it a focus of your ministry and your life and your family, all of it just wrapped together, because this is important. This is what Christ modeled for us. He didn't necessarily model flying to another part of the world. He did ministry around him. He would have gone to other places as well, but he also focused around him. So thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone at home for listening. This podcast obviously wouldn't exist without you. It needs somebody to listen to it. And I really want you to take today to heart, because this is as well a big important thing for me. I've grown a lot in this mindset over the years, because I used to think mission means you go somewhere. But really look in your own life. Where can missions be in your life today? Thank you. Goodbye.